that's what's so exciting about podcasting, about education right now, is that more and more people seem to be on board with disrupting it. And so our conversations that we thought were spicy 4 years ago are like, they're not spicy at all. Now we're getting, it's like, feels like, okay, people are on board.
What I enjoyed about this last year were the doers, the people who are actually in the classroom and making things happen, and then just talking about it, what was working, what wasn't working.
As the network of the podcast grows and the community grows here, you start to see these more dynamic, fluid conversations happening, and people feel less isolated.
We always say every one of our episodes could be a masterclass, and that's just not because Alli and I know everything. Guess what? We don't. It's because we have these amazing guests and all these different things that come to us.
You're listening to the Disrupt Education Podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Hostrawser and Alli Dahl.
Welcome back to the Disrupt Education Podcast. Peter Hostrawser here with Alli Dahl. Alli, we are in the absolute last day of 2025. How you doing?
Awesome to think like we're on the last day of 2025, because the podcast actually Wednesday, January 1st, 2025, like the first day of the year and the last day of this year are ending on Wednesdays, which is our release day. And that doesn't all, like sometimes, like next year, the first will be on a Thursday. And so, we actually got more episodes this year.
Yep.
We get by one, but that's just kind of fun. And 2025 was a big year for the podcast, and it's our celebratory end of the year episode. You're probably celebrating wherever you're at, New Year's Eve, or maybe it's already the new year when you're listening to this, but it's like a big day. People get contemplative on today. They think about a lot of things, and we are doing the same just for the Disrupt Education Podcast.
Yeah, we're working out. We have our workout regimen. We're gonna get healthier this year. Actually, though, what I really like about this podcast is, this always gives us a moment to kind of pause and really kind of take a look back at what unfolded. What were some of the big events, the big conversations that we have. Like we always say, every one of our episodes could be a masterclass, and that's just not because Alli and I know everything. Guess what? We don't. It's because we have these amazing guests and all these different things that come to us. So I guess I didn't even count. I should have counted, but are there like 53 then instead of 52?
Yeah. Because we started with 364.
Yeah.
And then this will be 415.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Do the math. I don't know. Somebody right now is doing it that fast. Is it 53?
51, but yeah. You know what? It should be 53. I don't know.
It's in there somewhere. See, we're always making corrections and learning. So yeah, there basically was a lot. It was 364, which is kind of crazy that we crossed the 400 point. We kind of started about like captivating classrooms. We usually choose a kind of a big kind of boom person. Captivating. The pyromaniac Mark Isaacs was ours for 2025, I think it was a good place to really start to captivate our audience. Right? Really, I've seen a lot more of him working on LinkedIn. It's kind of cool, and having some conversations, but. Yeah, it really started about how do we get everybody's attention, and I don't know. For me, that was a great start to the year, because I think this year is a ginormous transfer of mindset and education, which all our guests kind of jumped into. What were your thoughts?
Right? He really kind of set 2025 ablaze, and that was like our winter theme, and kind of like what needs to happen to kind of set education on fire. And yeah, we definitely appreciate setting off the year with that
Right.
kind of like call to action. I really do feel like the podcast caught fire. If anybody like reads Hunger Games or has read Hunger Games, right? Like there, one of the books is like Catching Fire, where Katniss is, like the girl on fire. And it's like a transformative moment in the book. And, like there are just moments in time where you kind of like look back and you're like, this year really a lot of things caught up in education. Like
Hmm.
the mindset of people, I think, is catching up more and more. Like it's obviously we're now nowhere close to being done. We still need to disrupt education, but I have not seen this big of a shift across a year since we started podcasting together, and since being even in education, that people are really hungry, and looking for new solutions.
Right. I think those solutions lie in, basically work-based learning, right? A lot of our guests were talking about just authentic learning that is not sit and get. I kind of like the going along with the initial kind of captivate. I think many of our guests, there was a lot of professionals that do some speaking and write some curriculum and different things like that, but we also had a lot of people who were in the classroom. And really, what I enjoyed about this last year were the doers, the people who are actually in the classroom and making things happen, and then just talking about it, what was working, what wasn't working. We had a lot of that. And it really got to the point where what is school for? A lot of people were talking about work-based learning, and we've had Jason and Kristy on several times, but I really like from the thought process from what are grades and what are test scores for? Like, show what you know. And there were so many people who were talking about how they would help their communities and even within their own school, where students can do things and really kind of learn real stuff. I hate to say it that way. It sounds icky, like real things. I mean, but it's just beyond just reading a book. And we kind of got into that a little bit deeper as we got into that first series where I mean, we had Jason Van Nuss showing up a couple of times, and really, man, just questioning, a lot of questions. We saw a lot of different things that he is bringing to the table. So I don't know. What are your thoughts like on work-based learning? Because as a science teacher, right? Like it's interesting. You have a different view, and you brought that up in a lot of our kind of reviews and such. But for me, I've always been in CTE, work-based learning, business education. But what are you thinking about that? Like as we went through the year, you started off really hot in that topic as a science educator.
I I think that's one of the reasons why I really loved the podcast and where it went this year, because I felt like I was learning so much about what's possible in a quote unquote traditional classroom. Like I was a core four teacher, right? Taught science. And yet, like as Mark Covell will say, he's like, pretty much people when they switch to CTE, they never want to go back. And I feel that like once you see the light, so to speak, the fire catches your eyes, you're like, I want to lean in. I want to dive further into work-based learning and CTE and all of that. And we got to meet and talk to so many people doing various things in that space, whether you're talking like Jason Walkie, Sandra Adams, Mark Covell, Jason Van Nuss. I mean, Bobby Miller, he's a woodshop teacher, but he's doing it on like a next level. Dan Thomas, right? Like he's retired now. Hope you're enjoying the golf
Yeah.
course.
Congrats, Dan.
But like he, was doing science and shop and stuff, but like the Legos, like he was taking it to a whole other level.
Hmm.
And you got like Simon and Jeff, like they're practitioners creating this awesome leaf lab. And I think, I mean, there's more. I'm just like, basically, there's so many people that are doing CTE in all of the settings
Hmm.
that like it's accessible. Like I can picture it now. Like if you needed to help someone who is like ready to dive into this type of work, and but they need to like they still need to work on some of their mindset, or like hear other people doing it, this year 2025 would be the podcast series to get them on in order to help them learn and meet people, like connect with our guests, to have conversations with them about what's working. And it's working in many different states, areas, rural, suburban, urban. And that's what's exciting, is that I feel like in podcasting with you and just all of the people that we meet, it's like someone who's painting. Okay, we'll use like, like a masterpiece mural. Like think of like St. Peter's Basilica or the Sistine Chapel. Like I'm certain whatever artist, okay, is like painting something to the outsider. Like they might be painting down on one column and then up on the ceiling, and they're like doing it in pieces and it doesn't look like anything. And um and for like years
Hmm.
potentially. These artwork pieces took a long time. And I feel like I've been like painting this room of education, and it's kind of been piecemealed, and it's now starting to take shape where it's like somebody looking at it would be like, oh, it's starting to make sense now.
Hmm.
That's what's been exciting for me, is that like I can picture the work-based learning, I can picture CTE integrated in any area, and it being far superior to anything I ever did in the traditional classroom.
Hmm.
That's what lights me up about this year, and like thinking back to like the collective of our guests, um that helped me kind of like really fill in a lot of gaps that I had, that I didn't
Hmm.
even know I had, and perceptions I had about CT and work-based learning, and um kind of just alternative ways to do high school in particular, that are now like starting to take shape.
That I really like the way that you thought about that, because I've never, my father was a math educator, and honestly I think he understood a student's interests and aptitudes somehow. I don't know, like, he just kind of did it, and he would talk to kids about their interests and what they want to do and those types of things. And then he would adapt his math to, smaller groups of people. And that was just kind of different at that time. And we're talking like years ago. And like you said, that slow churn of painting, and when you get closer, it's like the last like three pieces of a puzzle, which in the wintertime my wife and I, we just love to do puzzles, by the way. um and it's like you see those last pieces and they fit really quickly and things start moving quicker. I think that's like you so eloquently put, we're there. It really is part of the reason why I started the podcast. It was like, see people, right? And we're getting there faster and faster, and that's what I love. But we never forget about the student voice, right? The students that we have, and as we kind of went into the summer again, we did it again, and we actually did it a little bit differently with a couple of college age students, if you want to say, or post-secondary students. And it really it these journeys really do set this up for, hey, this is what happened because we didn't do this. Or this might have been part of what happened because I did choose to go this way. And we heard a lot of that. I mean, the one of my favorite quotes was from Liam, and it was that kind of college-ish plus. That I really like that, because it really does, like, people are just talking real. They're just telling you. I, sometimes, especially at the time that we are right now, as this podcast comes out, and I'm a secondary educator. Everybody's like, "Yo, I got into this school, or I'm going to go to this school or that school," and it's kind of they're just kind of like, "Yeah, I did it," but they aren't really doing anything. You know what I'm saying? And we'll go further down when we start talking about, YouScience and how they were speaking of, we're not done yet at high school. But I think that's what, a lot of people were saying, when Liam was like, it's plus, right after that. I really, we did jump back into Isaac Palmer. That was awesome. Hearing him talk about why he felt school was childish because it was kind of holding hands. And I think that's what this whole CTE thing is supposed to be eliminating. Like, it's not childish. Let's put away the child things and let's have our students and our educators work on real problems. And I think those are some of the good pieces out of there. And man, I mean, the Priv came out. You knew I had to say it in this episode. The Priv, talking about, like, graduation could mean a job or it might not mean a job. And I think, just looking from that coming backwards and looking back into what we're doing in a kind of a K through 12 system, it really does show, okay, it works for some. But there's a lot of gaps, and these gaps were filled with a lot of our guests on what they are doing to empower students, to have them become self-advocates, to have them plan, to really network. And we saw a lot of those. So I don't know. What do you got to say, the Priv? What do you think?
Well, thanks to Isaac, Liam, Abby, Lindsay, and Derek Griffin.
Yep.
DJ Sachs, are the podcast first guest ever. That summer series was not what we planned,
Mm-hmm.
and it actually set into motion like the rest of the year. And it only happened because of the really authentic conversations that each of those former students, whether and young adults,
Mm-hmm.
brought to the table, because they really left us with thinking about, like, where does the system just drop people? And like Isaac, it was in high school, he's just like, this is childish. And Liam, it was college and after college. And then, like, Abby and Lindsay, it was they're just post college, and one of them, like, the system worked and for the most part got them a job, but then, like, the job, she feels like she has no idea what she's doing. And then the other one, like, doesn't know what
Mm-hmm.
she's going to do next. And then you have Derek, who, like, he figured it out through, like, blood, sweat, tears. It wasn't necessarily like the system. It like was people. It was this networking. I think that's what we're finding too, is that, like, as the network of the podcast grows and the community grows here, you start to see these more dynamic, fluid conversations happening, and people feel less isolated. And for me, like, the summer series was like that turning point. It allowed us to see, I think, connections in past guests and other people who are in the space having conversations around what can we best do for our students in a new way, right? And so, we went down the fall then, like, into this. We really wanted to hit, like, okay, well, globally, what could it look like to disrupt the system? We went back and had a conversation with Kristy Volesky again and
Mm-hmm.
learned about EduVitality. And then we were like, okay, well, what is, like, a really good state model? And we talked to Dr. Gary Skeen in the Virginia Commonwealth. And then we looked at, like, a district level, what can change really look like, with Scott Carr, brought him back. And then it was like, okay, now in a school district, so one high school, what's an academy model where this is, like, on the ground boots, what's happening? And then we talked to Jeff Stenroos in Beloit, Wisconsin. And then it was like, okay, the personal level and the teacher student level and learning from Dr. Karen Baptiste, Dr. K, you have to have teacher efficacy.
Hmm.
So it came back, like, to me, what it boiled down to is like whether you looked at it for like globally at any level, though, the programs that are working are empowering and have happy teachers.
Hmm.
What doesn't matter, what doesn't seem to matter is like what the courses are, what we're teaching them. It's the experiences and the connection.
Yep.
And so like that really, like if you can see, like, the summer series was like, this is where the system kind of left us wanting. And then we kind of built it back up with like, this is where the system is working and working like to prevent that from happening
Yeah.
at all these different levels. And so, but that series was built in real time
Hmm.
as we were having the conversations with the students. And it was like such a big shift for us.
Hmm.
Um, and it was powerful because it was like it challenged us, I think, in new ways of podcasting. And I like, when especially we're doing end of year, I like to give the listeners always a little behind the scenes because if I'm when I listen to podcasts and like I can get like invested. Right.
Yeah.
I always love when they're like they share like fun little things. You're like, oh, I didn't know that about the podcast or about them, or like, I mean, I've said I've had chickens on the podcast before, but Peter thinks it's hilarious that I'm like a chicken keeper. And my chickens they're very integral. Like I actually, um, fun fact, this year when I got the chickens, I started like they're calming for me, and I do hold them, and I often hold them right before we podcast. And it's like a part of my podcast prep. And so Peter like asked me before we were podcasting today, like, did you get to hold your chickens today? I did. It wasn't right before, but I did get to.
No, I do. I like the fact that, kind of going on that, like some of these conversations that we have, I did get to work with Kristy and Scott Carr up in Wisconsin. We were at Nashville, finally got to meet Allie. There she is. So actually, little tidbit. If you guys follow us, you'll probably see some sort of pictures and things like that on LinkedIn. But I will tell you, I never met Allie before we hit Nashville at the ACT Visions. So in person, by the way. So that was awesome. Yeah, those are the kind of fun things that we get to do in here and around here. We've met a lot of our guests actually in person separately. And it's just interesting. It's really cool to be able to work with people. We don't just talk to people, we work with them. We have conversations. We talk about chickens, and no, there's a lot of different things that that's what I really love about this. It's not just, hey, this is the right way to do it, and let's all do it. It really is a conversation that's kind of open. Some of our conversations lead to some posts on LinkedIn, and it leads to some differences of opinions and things, and I think that's kind of that series. These were global pieces, like when you were saying, we went through Kristy and Gary and Scott, and then Jeff. Actually, Jeff came. Like I was like, I got to talk more to this guy because I met him up in Wisconsin, and Dr. Karen Baptiste. Dr. K, like, this is like we literally modeled this. That's what was so cool. Like you said, we built this through, and it's interesting because you know just at the end of the semester, one of the things that I was able to do was I got to work with one of my intern students, and he's on a sport, and he was really good the last couple of years, and then this year he started off the season struggling, and we had a conversation about that and how that like actually is kind of normal, right? And I talked a little bit about my own And I know you were an athlete, but I know my own experiences. I kind of peaked as a junior, and then I kind of started thinking, oh, my stats aren't that good, and I got in my head and all these different types of things. Um, but we were talking about, he's working with Leaf Lab. He's working with Jeff and and Simon and a couple of others. And I think it's just a great, I was like, this is teaching you how to get through that. And we were connecting, but we weren't like talking about a test or you checkbox. It was like, let's start connecting these things. So, even in our own practice, this is something that I get to do, and just really have these authentic conversations, not just with our guests and not just with our listeners, but really with the youth and the schools that we're at. And I think that's such a great thing. I mean, I know I mentioned a couple of things about previous basketball players that I had in class, and he remembered. And I'm like, how did you remember that? I mean, I can like, he's like, yeah, I remember you saying that. And I was like, wow, those are powerful words from our students, and well, I guess we're all learning together, but it really, really, you know, is that mindset shift of how we can everything is works together if we let it. And
Hmm.
I think we started to get into, as we were going into after Dr. K, we talked a little bit about, mindset, and then we started talking with Jason again. We brought Jason back too much. Jason, you're on the podcast. I'm just kidding. We love Jason. But really started talking about aptitudes, and you know what? We partnered with YouScience, which is new for us. But I think, really having conversations
Hmm.
off camera and off of in emails and some of our meetings, you get to feel an authentic company, and authentic leaders and authentic people who are really, really in it. They're not in it to make a buck. They're in it to change and to really start to make transformations in the education system and in the way that I always call it freeing our students and freeing our learners. So we jumped into that with Jason talking about the exposure gap and then education with the purpose. He got a little grumpy there, man. He was like, there's a
He
couple of
did
these
shift.
that he's good. You want to see Jason? He's a gentle disruptor, but he was a little less gentle in some of these.
He's grown a lot. If you
Yeah.
just listen to, I mean, like Jason was on the podcast 7 times this year. That's a
Oh my
record.
gosh,
Like,
I didn't even count.
yeah, so
He's
like
lucky
early on,
seven.
he was in our winter series, he was in our spring series, and then so you have to understand about like how that even like evolved is when you met Jason last year at 2024 Vision,
Correct.
and it was just like an instant like, yes, I want to hear about your reverse career fair, and I want to learn about what you're doing differently down in Georgia to disrupt education. And the conversation just like continued. And on the second time that he was on in the spring, he mentioned to us the only paid tool that he pays for in his program is YouScience. And it was like really, it caught us off guard.
Right.
Like in terms of like, he was like, you want me to talk about it? And we're like, yeah, like I want to know if this is something you advocate for, because this is like already the fourth episode he was on the podcast. And I will tell you, like, Jason uses the term like good count. Like he
Mhm.
says, like, YouScience is good count. Jason, you have good count, because he spends so much time talking to us about like our questions and diving into uh educational topics. I mean, like, oh, we kind of you have he posted like a whole big series on LinkedIn in the fall if you subscribe to his newsletter,
Mhm.
okay? And a lot of that was like, I feel like I've read those articles like 10 times, because we would just like we constantly having these conversations. So the behind the scene thread of 2025 for us and Peter, we're always trying to figure out like how can we best help teachers and people who listen to this podcast, which ultimately impacts kids. Because if we're going to
Hmm.
disrupt education, it's got to help kids. And we have been looking for something that we can 100% like back and be like, this is a game changer. This could really disrupt education if it was available at a bigger like scale. And that is YouScience. Like Jason mentioned it, got like we then learned about it very organically. And it was this behind the scenes 6 month plus conversation of like,
Hmm.
well, how can we really talk about this? And thus, like the series was born, which Jason then came back on for episodes 1, 2, and 5 of that 6 part series. And I mean, all the episodes are amazing. We had the CEO, Edson Barton. We had Shannon Cox and Katie Growhouse from Ohio, and
Hmm.
their work is just absolutely amazing. Abby came back on to show us like how YouScience could help someone post college that didn't have it in high school
Hmm.
or middle school or earlier, and it's just like we're still like baby birds with the software and what it can do. Like I'm not an expert. Like I don't use it daily.
Hmm.
Like Jason, he walked through like my results with me. Just because Jason's awesome. Okay, Jason Van Nuss. And like that's where you and I were like then you did it and you
Yep.
got your results and like they offer
My
so much
kids,
more.
my kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, I give it to my kids. It gives them clarity. I mean,
It's a
yeah,
game changer.
yeah.
It is like it that's how we ended and very intentionally ended 2025 is like if you go if it's actually it would be interesting if you haven't listened to the podcast if you're jumping in and like this is an episode you're jumping in someone shared it with you and you actually want to listen to 2025 I think in the order that would be like the best I would actually listen to the YouScience series first and then you
Yeah.
could go back through and listen to the whole thread of the year
Hmm.
and you would hear it differently like in preparation for this podcast, I was like, if I had known about YouScience 2 years ago, you know what I'm saying? Like, but this
Yeah.
year, I just think like all the places that it can really make a difference in so many people's work. Um, no matter what level you are, whether you are a teacher listening to this, an admin listening to this, a district leader, state level, you're a student, you're a parent, I literally check it out because well, I'm sure we'll have a link for it in the show notes. But it's like it is a game changer in terms of what it can do for individuals and then collectively. Um, and you recently posted when we're recording this how it expanded your mind of the difference between pipeline versus pathway.
Yeah.
So like as I think that's a really like big aha moment for you this year and for many of us because this year I will say has been a lot of like re-educating myself on the importance on precision of language in
Hmm.
education and it's messy right now and me and you are actively working on getting better about it. I know
Yeah.
that.
Kristy and Jeff used it. I know a couple other people on ramp, off ramp, right? Like or pathways where you can go different paths and pivoting and those types of things. And I fought tooth and nail with pipeline because pipeline when I was in sales, it was you got to get them into the sales pipeline, right? And that's where somebody would come through the pipeline and then purchase your product or service. Um, but then I started thinking about people being shoved into a pipeline. And you know what though? Yeah, I went back into all my socials and everything and changed that. But that's a learning moment. And I think, number one, I hope our listeners have those learning moments because it's so powerful to really start to understand. And honestly, yeah, I'm going to give another shout out to Jason again because of his series just how he I don't know, is a linguist where he can really kind of connect what the professional world says in education. That was a big, big issue throughout the entire year of how do we figure out how to get both the professional world and the academic world to start speaking the same, right? That's going to help pull down some of these silos. And I know we just went over it last week, but the Kristy in Jeff's book, CTE Reimagined, she did say something that was very, very connected to our episode 409, right in the middle of that YouScience with Shannon and Katie, talking about the economic development, right? Like this is big. Like if you imagine what was happening like before when we're just like, okay, we're just dumping workers into where there's problems. And, Shannon and Katie were already talking about how it was driving economic development in that region of Ohio. And then just a couple episodes after, and in the book, Jeff and Kristy are talking about this is bigger than just checkboxing students and getting them to the next level. This is bigger than grades and credentials and all these things. This really is giving a kind of a problem solving, a purpose, a mindset of freeing everybody to be the best at what they want to be and that they are apt at. I mean, that was entirely all the way through. I felt like after, I don't know, I guess 406, our last like maybe 10 episodes, really took everything that we did at the beginning of the year and really just started rolling it up and saying, guess what? Here's here's a way to start that painting, and it's kind of paint by numbers, but you are individually understanding each number. Students, that's a bad analogy. The students are not numbers, right? So that's why I want to, like, it really is. I think that's what really drew us to not only YouScience, but also drew us to Jason, is the individualized, like, that's where you start. You don't start at the system and front load everything and say you have to go through these steps. It starts with the individual that you're working with, the team that you're working with. And that's such an interesting concept. And I know we're going to go bigger into the next year, but really understanding, every conversation here had this opportunity to really understand people first, and then really giving real options to people to grow and to learn, rather than just pushing stuff out at people and saying, here's a diploma, and we're going off to the next. And thank you, by the way. I don't care where you're working, right? We're going to check that box. This whole year, Allie, like, we really went deep into it, and you really do feel that shift. There's a shift in the way that education is happening, because I wanna talk about a student that is in one of my courses, my internship courses. And, we were in our smaller meetings, and he came into class, and, right around now is the time where if students are going to choose to go to 2-year, 4-year, there's a lot of applications. My daughter's into that. My son wasn't. But there's a lot of applications, a lot of, so you ask, so what are you hearing about the next level of your education? Anything? Without hesitation, Allie, without hesitation, that I've ever heard a student come up with a plan. This young guy who is on the golf team is a very good golfer. I love golfers. And he said, I'm going to go to COD, which is our College of DuPage, which is our 2-year or 3-year, depending on what community college. It's our community college. It's a great community college. And basically, he was like, I'm going to go 2 years there, and I'm going to do the 2+2. So then I'm going to start there, and then I'm going to play golf, and then I'm going to go get my bachelor's, after 2 years. Like, without hesitation. I've never heard a student say it that way. Because usually sometimes they're like, oh, I'm going off to community college, I guess. I don't really know. This kid is planned. He understood. He understood there was value. He understood that he was saving money. He understood that he could still play golf. And he knows what he's going into, which is business with a little bit of marketing and finance in it. I've never heard that before. And that, to me, was kind of like the capstone on this year on the Disrupt Education podcast, where we just talked about that, and our students are leading the way, and we're now kind of catching up and learning. Although I think we've been at this long enough where we're like, see, but I love to hear that, and to have a student say, you know what, boom, boom, boom. Even my own daughter is talking about going to. She wants to do a 4 year. That's her choice. I'm okay with it. But she's also very conscious of how much money she's getting, and she will tell me how much it's going to cost. I will not say, I don't say a word. I don't say, well, how much is that going to cost? She came to me and told me because she got a scholarship, and she's like, okay, even with this scholarship, it's going to cost this much. Like, our kids are thinking this. Their parents are thinking this. We all need to be thinking, okay, how can we do this better? And that's 2025. I just love that this is happening. And we get to be in the middle of it.
It's what I'm saying. Like looking back, it's fun to think like where where the podcast was, where we were at the beginning of 2025. Anybody listening to this, like think about where you were a year ago. And I like taking that pause and like looking back in order to lean forward because it I I love the phrase, people wildly overestimate what they can do in a year, but underestimate what they can do in 5.
Mm.
And right, like with the podcast, right, you were like, I'm going to disrupt education in a year. And like, you're like 10 years in at this point. And your own change and people's change. Like I will say the most recent conversation we had where somebody gave a timeline of like the work was Katie and Shannon in Ohio, and they said they're 7 years in to the journey with the career navigator model and the YouScience partnership with their district. And but that kind of the last like 5 to 10 years in education, like we're now 5 years out of the pandemic, or not,
Mhm.
like since then. And so it can be, you can feel like, oh, I really haven't gone that far in a year. But like if you look back a few more, you'd be like, whoa, I'm totally in a different place and mindset and everything. The podcast feels that way. We've been podcasting now for like almost 4 years, and which is also crazy. But just to think like that, you know if you started something only a year or two ago and it doesn't feel like you're making progress, you are like
Mhm.
you are. And like to just encourage people to keep going with wherever they are in education. And like maybe you aren't where you want to be, like Peter and we're always have like bigger aspirations for the podcast, and it's like it's growing and it's good, we love doing it, and we're going to keep doing it because like we want to disrupt education. But it's like it's not disrupted yet, it's not disrupted education, it's disrupt educate, like it's not past tense, people. So just, yeah, like it's always good to reflect and be encouraged by where you are in your journey. And it's a journey, right? It's a pathway. Like there's on and off ramps, and those are good things. Like education, like can take a lot of right, like muse. They can be, like from the podcast, like it can be a muse. It is for me. I know in my own like journey from since leaving the classroom full time, like it helps me see education in all these different lights and angles. As I'm painting my mural, I'm kind of reimagining what education can be. It takes time. It takes time to like internally like process it and learn about it in order to like change your mind to then like actually go and do something, and then have that kind of catch fire. And right, if it's catching fire, hopefully it's like set ablaze, and like it can take a while before something does catch, but it will. And it is, that is what we are seeing. And that's what's so exciting about podcasting about education right now, is that more and more people seem to be on board with disrupting it. And so our conversations that we thought were spicy 4 years ago are like, they're not spicy at all. now now we're getting, it's like feels like okay, people are on board And so more and more people come to us all the time and they're like, do you want to talk about this? Do you want to go in this direction? And that's really cool is to just to explore all the different ways people are disrupting education. It seems like we have so many, and that's exciting. I know Sandra Adams said to me, she's like, I've been waiting for more and more CTE leaders, and now it seems like there are some. So
Yeah.
that's kind of cool.
Yeah. We've crossed over 400 episodes. We have over 500,000 downloads. We have parents, students, leaders, educators. It's really it's interesting. I know I've said this to a lot of people off camera. Um, that's great. Um, I don't think we are both into this to become super famous or anything like that, but I really do like the fact that we have the right people. And it is people that are tuning in, they're asking questions, they're creating conversations. Um, we're learning together, we're building. And that's what I love about this Disrupt Education community. This is what I love about basically the people that we talk to, the people that we've met. It's look, I'm 20, I'm going into my 24th year of education, which kind of horrifies me that I'm saying that out loud, but um I don't think I've ever been more excited. Like it's weird. It's just the opposite, I think. So, as an educator, a learner, somebody who's just interested in moving things forward and creating better opportunities for people, thank you. I mean, yeah, you all are responding. You're reaching out. You're conversating with us on LinkedIn. We're just humbled, really, and I think that's that's what Scott Carr is. It's impact, right? That's an impact number. It's not like just okay, it's a checkbox or a GPA. It's impact, and what I really like is hearing the stories on and off camera here of what people are really doing and why they're doing it. And it's been crazy. And thank you for 3.5, 4 years now. Oh my gosh, Allie, well, you must have been like 12 when you started. Oh my, so, but no, I can't thank you enough because it really, it is for me, it's been something that really taught me that you can't do it alone. You have to find the right people. And with you as an anchor, a co-host, somebody who does, and by the way, people don't understand, Allie does a lot of work off camera too. So she doesn't just pet chickens all day, people. So, but we're working on really, keeping our voices and the people we have on authentic, and that takes some work. It takes a lot of behind the scenes and such, and again, I want to thank YouScience for this year. Some of the stuff that we worked on with them, I think it's going to be an interesting 2026. It'll be newer. But I just love the fact that we're here. And honestly, Allie, going into the 10th year of this, I've never thought I'd ever make it to this. So just humbled. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Peter, because you started this whole thing. We literally, none of us, myself or anyone listening, would be able to disrupt education in the way that you kind of set the vision for. And that's really, really cool. And you're going to be double digits podcasting. And that's super cool. We have a lot more in store for 2026. It's going to come in like, as Miley Cyrus, a wrecking ball. I think it's coming in hot, different than setting it ablaze, but I think our listeners are in for a real treat. And we're in the works of bringing you guys awesome stuff each week. We that's like the fun part for me is trying to create the series that make the most impact and find the right voices. We both do that, but it's a it's fun doing it and building it out. So yeah,
Yeah.
bring it on.
Yeah, right. Bring it on. I love that. Yeah, we're gonna have some more obviously voices from all over the world. We're gonna be experimenting more, not just discussions. We'll be talking with different like I said, all walks of life, different ways that learning and work in the professional world and the academic world collide. There's a lot, and you know what? It's something that we can't really just say, hey, this is going to happen because we don't know everything, but we know it's going to be a journey. And again, we want to thank you because this really isn't a podcast. It's always been a movement. It's always been a place to where people can voice what is going on in their world and to share it, and then obviously to try new things. And you know what, it's not all crystal clear, it's not perfect, and that's exactly the way it's supposed to be. So we're going to encourage everybody to share your stories, pitch your ideas, reach out. We love to hear some different voices and how you're shaping where you are going next and where we are going next. But a big cheers to 2025, and we're going to get bold in 2026. So for Alli Dahl, I'm Peter Hostrawser. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us on the Disrupt Education podcast. We'll see you next year. Thanks for tuning into the Disrupt Education podcast. If this episode sparked an idea, pushed your thinking, or made you look at education a little bit differently, well, that's the point. We're here to elevate real stories, real people, and real change within our schools and communities. If you want more conversations like this, head over to disrupteducationpodcast.com. You'll find episodes, resources, and ways to connect with Alli and I. Hey, let's keep disrupting, because the future belongs to the learners who dare to do things differently. We'll catch you next time.